Good morning, guys. So I wanted to do a quick video. I've been getting a lot of people asking me if I knew that my son was autistic. So, hi, buddy. Good morning. Can you say good morning?
Good morning. It's a little bit windy out.
It is. Go ahead on the couch and play your states because it's a little chilly out here.
Okay, then I'll go at this side.
So I had a lot of questions asking me, if there were signs or, good morning. You're such a cutie pie. Hi.
Hi.
This one's not going to be a fun video, so you don't have to be out here for this if you don't want to.
I do. I just want to be here. Collect my states. Can I just sit in this seat?
Yeah. So a lot of people were asking me if there were any signs or like inclinations that Max was on the spectrum or he had autism. And honestly, there were things that made sense after the diagnosis that I was like, wow, so that explains this, this, and this. So first, I'll start off by saying that Max was born 2 weeks early due to the fact that I had preeclampsia and he was huge. So he was already measuring full term by the time I was 8 months. So they wanted to take him out 2 weeks early. And that was a whole debacle in itself. We were in the hospital for 4 days. And they had to induce me 3 times in the first 2 days to get him out. So when he was born, he was wrapped in the cord, and they had to get him out. So that was a little scary. And then he just screamed in my face. So cute little baby, and we went to our room and I noticed that he kept sticking his arms out and shaking, and the doctor said it's fine. And then he wouldn't breastfeed. Like they kept trying to make me breastfeed him and he wasn't getting anything and he kept crying. So I just grabbed one of those bottles out of the thing and started feeding him because he was hungry. So he had the high bilirubin, and they had to put him in the NICU. So I wasn't allowed to hold him or anything. He had to be under the lights. And then he had to get tested every 2 days once we were able to bring him home. And during that time, they said that the more he eats, the better it would be. But again, he wasn't eating much off of me, so I kept substituting with formula. So this brings me to my first issue is over the next couple months, we noticed some gastro issues. So it's been pretty much since day one, and now at 4 years old, he still has them. It took them a while to figure out a good plan for him, which ended up being a specific type of formula. After all the expensive brands that they tried didn't work, it was just an average Gentilese, I think it was called Gentilese, and ranitidine. They said that he had a silent reflux, so we used that, which was okay. They didn't figure this out until he was close to coming off of formula. I would say maybe 4 months before he came off the formula. And then he handled everything else well. He couldn't eat properly, like he would choke all the time. So he was on soft foods up until almost 2 years old. So we dealt with that. So that was like the gastro issue was the main thing. He still withholds. So he'll have to go to the bathroom and he will do everything he can to not let it come out, which then causes a backup and impaction. And then that's a whole nother story. So we deal with that. The other thing that I noticed was he was extremely intelligent at a very young age. So when he was a few months old, he could repeat what you were saying. Not all the time, but like my daughter said, I love you. I love you, Max. And he said, I love you, Max. But like in a baby voice, like, you know, but you could clearly tell that he was mimicking her. At maybe 6 to 8 months old, he was learning his shapes and colors. So you could say like, where's the yellow triangle? And he would tap it. So he was extremely smart with that. The other thing that I noticed as hindsight was TV programs. He would only watch certain shows. So he only had one interest. And so he watched Harry the Bunny. And if you put on Elmo or you put on Sesame Street or you put on anything else, he would just scream. And then you put on Harry the Bunny and nothing. Totally silent, just watching it. So this was when he was just starting to talk. So he couldn't say like, you know, I don't like this show or, you know, anything like that. And it became like these repetitive behaviors. So he was on this Harry the Bunny for a long time. Then he moved on to other shows like Word Party and Baby Einstein or Little Einstein or something. But it was repeatedly over and over. He would just watch these shows. He would get stuck on one thing and that's it. By a little over one, he knew all of his musical instruments and what they did. He could point them out. He could tell you what they were. Then he moved on to planets. He moved on to the anatomy and internal organs, the solar system, and now he's done the states, and now he's on to the countries. So he picks one topic and he sticks to it. So that what I learned from the doctor is part of it, like where they have like this one track, they get a special interest and that's it. The other thing is loud noises. He didn't like loud noises. And then, as some of you know, I was an extreme couponer. So we would go to the stores frequently. And sometimes he would do great. We would be in and out. Everything's perfect. And sometimes he would throw these fits. They were like, not a tantrum, like a normal, you know, tantrum. Like, I want this and you're not giving it to me, so I'm going to throw a fit. It was like a sobbing meltdown with screaming and kicking, and there was no reasoning. There was no bribing because I'm not above it. I would be like, do you want these markers? Do you want this toy? Come on, calm down. Everything's okay. We're leaving. Nothing could get him out of this until we were home. Like, not even in the car, home. And even then, it would have to work its way down. So to me, once these started happening more frequently, I noticed, like, you know, there's something wrong. It happened at supermarkets. It happened at a museum, like a children's museum. And this is when I started thinking, like, something is not right, because at the museum, I couldn't get him into his car seat. We had my mom, my daughter, her friends, and me. We could not get him in the car seat. He was buckling straight, kicking and punching, and it was horrible. We were all in tears because it was so frightening that we couldn't calm him down. And he cried the whole way home. And then when we got home, he was so worn out that he eventually fell asleep and woke up with a night terror, which is another issue that we have, that he has had since birth, where he would just wake up screaming inconsolably. Most of the time he would complain his legs hurt during this, but his eyes were open. Again, you couldn't reason with him. You couldn't calm him down. And then you would put on like a show. So he was into funny videos. So we would put on a funny video, animal video. And it would be like, all of a sudden he'd wake up, like, look around, like, and he would start laughing, and then he was just himself. So the doctor said that that is a separate issue. But it would seem to happen when he was overstimulated. Birthday parties, if he had a timeout. If we had people over, like anything with a change of routine. So that would happen. Another thing that I noticed is that he lined things up frequently. Like you would just like walk into a room and there would be a line of shoes down the room, or a line of cars, or cubes, like little blocks, stickers, pieces of paper, plastic cups, anything that he could get. They would just be lined up. So those are the main issues. The other biggest thing is that he doesn't wear clothes. He'll wear a pull-up, but he will not wear clothes. Or shoes. So you could put his shoes on, and by the time you're getting the second one on, he already took the first one off. He's thrown them out of the car, out the window. He took them off actually during evaluation. Took his shoes off and threw them at my mom. Took his pants off and then scratched his butt, which is another issue they said. So I had turned like every shade of red. But the doctor explained that that's another thing. They don't understand social cues. Like they don't understand, like, this is not okay. This is not what we do outside. The social cues. So he didn't understand facial expressions much. We worked on it and he does understand them now. So he knew some things, but like if he would do something bad and I would be like, he would say, what is that face? I don't like that face. What is that face? Like he didn't understand what it meant. But we did get pictures of different faces and said like, this is happy, this is sad. So then we would say like, can you point to the happy? Can you point to the sad? And so on. So he does understand that now. And he actually makes a lot of faces. So there's things that we were able to work on. The main thing is his sensory processing disorder, which is textures of food. He can taste everything. Like you cannot stick medicine in anything. He knows it's there and you will wear the medicine. So that is one. The clothes, not wearing clothes, not wearing shoes. When he started school, I was like really worried that, you know, he wouldn't stay dressed in the class. So it's only a 2-hour class. And he did try the shoe thing in the beginning, but they just told him like, you have to keep your shoes on. And he did really well. And now I think because he was in school for a few months before this quarantine, he's actually wanting to wear clothes now, and he will dress himself. Sometimes backwards, sometimes 2 legs in 1 pant leg, whatever. But he's getting used to texture. The one thing that he's always done is cuddle with the blanket fully around him. Since a baby, and he still does it now. It's a comfort thing. Before school, you couldn't dress him right away. He would have to lay with the blanket for at least 10 minutes. And he would tell you, no, I need to lay here with my blanket. So that is another thing. So the sensory thing, we noticed that sensory play helps a lot with him. Different textures and feelings, because instead of having that playtime, he would do it with his dinner, like potatoes, applesauce. He was just in it and clapping it around, and there was food everywhere. So if we have like a designated time, that helps a lot. As he's getting older, things are becoming a little less. Like with the clothes, he's wearing the clothes and the shoes, and he actually asked for shoes, so he got 2 new pairs of shoes this week. Anything that's uncomfortable. One of the biggest issues sensory-wise is his head. He does not like anything to touch him on his head. Like washing his hair, cutting his hair, brushing his hair, anything with his hair. Even if you're laying with him and you just like are doing like this, he'll let you do it for a very short time, and then he says, no. I think it starts to make his head tingle. I don't know. So That's a huge one, is his head. He's very sensitive with his head. He will cuddle with you, but he likes to be behind you. So he'll let you hold him, but it's not very long, and he prefers to be, if you sit sideways and your legs are bent, he prefers to be in that little nook, which is great too. What else is there? So his aggression. This is probably the biggest thing that I worry about. He is so strong, like so strong, that when he was having these meltdowns, it became scary because he could overpower us, and I'm a big girl, but I feared that using force on him, like pushing him in the seat, could hurt him because he was so forcefully staying straight. You know what I mean? So you just can't do that. So that is a huge concern, that he is so strong. And of course, this is not malicious or violent. This is just, part of the interaction. He has punched and kicked and thrown blocks and shoes and, tons of things. He has, trying to toilet train, putting him on the potty to get out these impactions was horrible. And it was like so common. It would happen at least every 10 days. And we would have to sit him on the potty, and I would sit in front of him and put his legs around me to hold him. And I would have to hold his back with my hands because he would thrust his back and get a bruise, and wait for this to come out. And it hurt, and it was like he was in labor. It was pain. So he had to let that frustration out, and it's just me. And I just had to take it because he was in so much pain, and I had to help him get this out, get this relief. So he wasn't doing it maliciously. He was doing it out of frustration, out of pain. And that seems to be the increase in aggression, is when he's in pain or when he, is frustrated. Luckily, he doesn't do it too often now. His bowels are a little bit better. But he does have his moments, if he's frustrated, where he will just like lash out, so we're working on that. And I don't punish him per se. Like I noticed when he was young, before we got his diagnosis, if I put him in timeout, it made it worse. If I yelled, it made it worse. Which I don't yell that often, but even like a stern voice, it just made it worse. So what I do now is he will get timeouts. Now, when it is a behavior of a 4-year-old, when it's just him not listening because he doesn't want to, or, come on, buddy, it's time to clean up your toys, and he says no, and then wants to start like being mean and throwing stuff. If he doesn't listen, like yesterday, he ran down the street, he'll get a timeout for that stuff. But it's like, sit on this chair with me, and we're going to talk about what you did and why you can't do it. So punishments were not good. Younger, you would think terrible twos and this and that. It was a little difficult because you have terrible twos, but then it's enhanced by this disability, and you don't want to affect the situation worse. So I've had other people say to me, he just needs discipline. I throw him in a timeout. He needs a spanking. No. So even before the diagnosis, I would you know, have to tell these people, like, you don't understand. This isn't like a typical, this isn't a typical tantrum. This isn't a typical, I can't explain it. Like, it's just, it's not a typical event that you would have with a toddler, and nobody gets it. You know what I mean? Nobody really got it. But we knew, me and my mom, we knew. So we knew something was off, and we just didn't know what. Like, Max has an extremely high tolerance for pain. So part of his stimming would be running in circles, and it seemed to be before bedtime. When it was almost time for bed, he would just run in circles, run in circles, run in circles, fast. And then he would start running in circles and then jumping onto his legs, like jumping onto his knees. So when he was having these night terrors and complaining about his legs, I kept taking him to the doctors, and they kept saying, everything's fine, everything's fine. But we weren't sure, because when he wakes up crying in pain about his legs, we have to take it seriously, because the kid, he has had a double ear infection with no symptoms, and I could just look at him and tell something was off. So I would take him to the doctors, and boom, double ear infection. But he doesn't express his pain. So we have to watch with when he gets frustrated, his aggression, because he doesn't understand that, like, he's learning now that his actions when he's frustrated are hurting people. So if he accidentally threw something, not accidentally threw, if he purposely threw something and accidentally hit you, he would apologize. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. If he was in one of his moods and frustrated and he purposely threw something, he will not apologize. The main things that we deal with are he's extremely smart learning wise. His comprehension of social cues and social situations is different, and it takes longer. He's an extremely picky eater, so it's hard to get a lot of nutrients in him. This is evolving now. He's starting to try new things. A lot of things that you give him, he'll just spit out. It's really hard to get him to eat, you know, a decent amount of food. The frustration and aggression, thankfully, it is not very often anymore. It is very few and far between, because we try to keep him busy as possible. If he is content, and, you know, if he's frustrated, then we try to deal with the frustration. Like, what's going on, buddy? Can you tell us? Like, do you need something? Do you, you know, so one of the funniest things was he was crying just out of the blue, just crying and in a bad mood. And I'm like, what's, like, he kept screaming and screaming. And I'm like, buddy, like, come here, come sit with me. What's going on? Is everything okay? Like, what's bothering you? And he was like, you're bothering me. And we just all started laughing. I was like, oh my goodness. So the fact that he can communicate is good, but sometimes these meltdowns happen for no reason that he can explain to us or that we can see. So we just kind of have to just go with it. So we're still learning. We're still, you know, trying new things and constantly researching. So he is in preschool. He has an IEP, and his study team said that he's doing so well. Academically, he's above the grade, but that's not why he's in school. He's in school for the social interaction. So basically, when I put him in for the lottery, because they only take a certain amount of kids in pre-K, so it's pre-K 3. He got in on the lottery, and I called the school and said, could you give it to somebody else? I'm just not sure that he's ready or that the school's ready, because the doctor had suggested at this point to get him evaluated. And we were having a hard time finding a doctor to evaluate a child that is 3 years old. So what they did was the school study team contacted me and said that they would like to evaluate him, and they did. And then they sent me to a psychologist, one of them. They sent me there, and he evaluated him. So my pediatrician and the neurologist had already said that they felt he was on the spectrum. Once this doctor had confirmed it, they took everything into their own hands, this school. They did an amazing job. They set him up with a plan. He had his own aide, and I was able to tell them what my fears were. And the main thing was that, his aggression towards other people in the class, because they're little kids, and what if it happened in there? And also him not listening to the teacher and possibly running, off the property. And him having a meltdown and me not being there. So they did amazing. He did amazing. There has not been, there was one issue. He wouldn't stay in his seat or something. So he didn't get a sticker. But other than that, he has done fabulous. He loves all the kids. The teacher told me during our meeting that he is so friendly. He has his favorite friends, but he is kind to everyone and helpful to everyone. So it's really good to hear, because it's progress that he can function outside of the home, and that's great. So we're just basically constantly learning. Now, because his diagnosis is fairly new, we would still like to get him into therapies. Unfortunately, our insurance doesn't cover much until right now an act was passed that he will be able to get the help that he needs. However, with the quarantine, there's not much available right now. So this is our next step, is to do the therapies and stuff like that. So this is pretty much the gist of it. So with Max, they explained that the spectrum is so wide that you can go from high functioning autism to completely non-communicative, non-verbal, and there is every single step along the way between them. So you could have like a non-verbal highly functioning, or a verbal but like non-functioning, like not able to progress. So where Max is at is more towards Asperger's on the spectrum. Asperger's is no longer a diagnosis, they said. It all falls under the rainbow of autism. So this is where we're at. These are little things that I noticed with certain behaviors that, I wanted to share with you guys, because I've gotten the questions, and I hope that, it helped a little bit. But here is my thoughts, is if you feel that you have a question about your child's well-being, or their health, or mental stability, or, anything with your child, talk to your doctor. If your doctor is not hearing what you're saying, find a new doctor. Parents know when something's off. Now, we knew something wasn't right, we just didn't know what it was. So every time we were going to the doctors, we were like, something's wrong with his legs, something's wrong with this, he's freaking out, something's wrong. We didn't know what we were looking for. So it wasn't until the pediatrician had said, I would like you to get him tested or evaluated. And I was like, what? Like, I started crying, like, what? Nothing is wrong with my kid. What are you talking about? If something's up. So having the diagnosis was the biggest blessing, because now we know what we're dealing with, and able to find ways to deal with it properly. So it's just been so much better having a routine and knowing how to properly deal with certain situations that could have escalated before and you feel stuck. How do you do this? So the main thing is to get your child evaluated if you feel that they need to be, if you feel that, you know, there's a reason that you would think that they either have delays or they have this or that, then that's the way to go. So I hope that this was a little bit helpful for you guys. This is our story. I'm sure that I left stuff out, but I don't have like a cheat sheet or anything. So, you know, I'm sure we can update this at some point. But if you guys have any questions or, you know, any of your own stories that you would like to tell me in the comments, that would be really interesting. So thank you guys for hanging out with me this morning. I hope you all have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.